The silverware trembled on white linen as the old Italian man stepped into the chandelier-lit ballroom, his presence heavy with history, power, and unsaid expectations. And in that single breath before the room found its rhythm again, a poor waitress spoke a simple Italian greeting that cut through decades of silence and froze every guest in place. Before the story unfolds further, take a moment to like this video, comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel Soulful Stories if you believe one small moment can change an entire life. She had not planned to speak. She had planned to survive. The waitress had been on her feet since dawn, shoes worn thin, uniform slightly loose on her narrow frame, heart constantly calculating how many hours of work stood between her and tomorrow's rent. This gala was not meant for people like her. It was a world of polished shoes, tailored suits, diamond laughter, and soft power spoken in low, confident tones. She moved quietly among them, carrying trays that cost more than her monthly paycheck, eyes lowered, careful not to exist more than necessary. She did not know much about the guests, only that this night mattered more than most. The billionaire CEO's father had arrived from Italy, a man whispered about with reverence, a man whose approval was worth more than stock prices. The waitress noticed him immediately, not because of his wealth, but because of the way he walked slowly, as if every step carried memories heavier than age. His eyes were sharp but tired, scanning the room not for admiration but for something missing, something familiar, something human. As she approached with a tray of water glasses, she felt a strange tightening in her chest. It reminded her of her childhood kitchen, of cracked tiles and simmering sauce, of a language she had not spoken aloud in years. A language tied to loss. Her hands shook as she reached him, and before fear could stop her, before logic could interfere, the greeting slipped from her lips in Italian, not polished, not rehearsed, but warm and respectful, the way her father used to greet elders back home. The words were simple, but the room reacted as if a bell had been struck. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Smiles froze. Even the music seemed to hesitate. The CEO stiffened, turning sharply, his face a mixture of shock and confusion. No one expected the waitress to know that language. No one expected her to know that greeting. The old man's eyes softened instantly. Years seemed to melt from his face. He looked at her not as staff, not as invisible labor, but as someone who had unlocked a door he thought was sealed forever. The guests did not understand what had happened, but they felt it. Something intimate, something sacred. The air grew thick with emotion that money could not buy. The waitress stood there, heart pounding, certain she had made a terrible mistake. Her mind raced with consequences. Being fired would mean losing everything. She had already lost too much, her mother to illness, her father to exhaustion and time, her home to circumstances that did not care about effort or dreams. She worked 3 jobs once. Now she worked 2. She sent money back when she could. She slept with hope folded carefully so it would not tear. What no one in that room knew was that her father had been Italian, a migrant worker who never quite belonged anywhere, a man who taught her the language not as a skill but as a memory. He used to say language was a way to carry people with you even after they were gone. When he passed, she stopped speaking it. It hurt too much. Tonight, without warning, it returned. The CEO's father reached for her hand gently, as if afraid she might disappear. His gaze searched her face for stories, for echoes of another time. In that moment, the power dynamic shattered. The billionaire CEO was no longer the center. The guests were no longer important. There was only an old man and a young woman connected by words that tasted like home. Management hovered nervously. This was not on the schedule. This was not protocol, but something about the old man's expression made them pause. He had not smiled like that since arriving. He had not looked present. Now he did. As the evening unfolded, the waitress was asked to stay nearby. Not to serve, but to exist. The old man listened as she spoke quietly of her father, of Naples streets remembered through stories, of lullabies she still hummed when the world felt too loud. The CEO watched from a distance, seeing his father open in ways he had not seen in years. He realized that success had built many things, but it had also taken something away: the sound of his own roots. By the end of the night, the guests left with full bellies and shallow conversations, but the room carried a deeper aftertaste. The waitress went home that night without knowing what tomorrow would bring, but something inside her had shifted. She felt seen, truly seen, not as a servant of survival, but as a person with history and value. Days later, everything changed. Not dramatically at first. A phone call, a meeting, an offer to help translate, to assist, to work closely with cultural outreach the company was expanding into. It was not charity, it was recognition. Her language, her pain, her past had become a bridge. The old man returned to Italy weeks later, lighter than when he arrived. The CEO began learning the language he had ignored, and the waitress, once invisible, stood taller. She still worked hard. Life did not magically soften, but opportunity had cracked the door open. If this story is touching something inside you right now, please pause for a moment near the end and comment below with a single word that describes how it made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. Years later, she would remember that night not as the moment her life changed financially, but as the moment she learned that kindness spoken in one's truest voice can reach places power never will. She learned that dignity does not come from position, but from authenticity. And somewhere in Italy, an old man would remember a poor waitress who greeted him like family and gave him back a piece of himself.